And joining us right now is our weekly guest, Joe DiGenova. Every Monday we get to hear from Joe. He's a legal analyst for Fox News and, of course, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey, Joe, we mentioned this last hour. Washington, D.C. apparently is really having a tough time meeting welfare work requirements. Apparently, only about 1 in 5 D.C. welfare recipients actually do the work necessary to meet the welfare work requirements. And this is the kind of thing, Joe, that gets under people's skin like nothing else. We went through all the political wrangling back in the 90s when we finally had welfare reform. We finally put in these provisions where the vast majority of the American people support this, even though we get called every name in the book for wanting people who are getting federal assistance to actually make an effort to try to work and try to get a job. And now we find out that municipalities aren't actually enforcing it. As the attorney to the District of Columbia for the U.S., what could you or would you have done in this case?
Well, you know, there's nothing a private citizen can do to enforce these regulations. This is pure governmental function. Only the government can enforce the work requirements. And as you know, the Obama administration has sent a strong signal to the states that if they want to liberalize and change their work requirements, they can do so. Now, usually, they require some form of regulation or legislation to change those work requirements. But here, you have absolute defiance by the people getting the benefits. This is an example of why the District of Columbia remains, in the view of the American people, a very bad form of government. It doesn't matter what their surpluses are, whether those surpluses are real or fake. The truth is, the management of the government is abysmal, and this is a prime example of it. But regrettably, there's nothing that a citizen can do about it, but the city council can do something about it, and so can Congress. But Congress has basically abdicated its oversight responsibility of the District of Columbia, even though under Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress has plenary legislative authority over everything that the district does.
I want to talk about a young reporter by the name of Jana Winter. And if you haven't heard about Jana Winter, it's probably because nobody's paying much attention to what I think is a very important story. She's a FoxNews.com investigative reporter. She broke some news about the Aurora shooter. His name's James Holmes. She came up with some information that got reported on FoxNews.com. Now she's being subpoenaed and said, we want to know who your sources were in this matter. And if she refuses, there is the possibility she could go to jail. Where does this stand, Joe?
Well, it's pending before a Colorado court. She broke a story shortly after she went there after the shooting and got information from a law enforcement source about the psychiatrist's report that had painted this guy as a monster and a danger to society. That was the biggest story out of the reporting from Colorado. Subsequent to that, the defense attorneys filed a motion to find out who it was who had leaked the information to her because they said their client was being denied a fair trial as a result of the leak. It's quite obvious that their client is not being denied a fair trial, and if the trial judge in this case, who has this motion, has an ounce of brains, he's going to deny the attempt to find out who the source for the leak was. But up till now, the reporter, Jana Winter, has refused to disclose who her source was, and she continues to do that. Theoretically, she could be held in contempt and put in jail until such time as she tells the court who her source was. My guess is, from everything that I've seen, is she's not going to reveal her source, and this is going to get very ugly.
I couldn't imagine that she would, but I mean, if this was a reporter for the New York Times or the Washington Post, all manner of reporting would be done about this reporter in the attempt to get her to reveal her source. We're not hearing that at all.
Well, of course, this is the old double standard that exists in American journalism today. If you work for Fox, too bad. If you work for anybody else, my God, there'll be demonstrations, street parades. But I'm happy to see that Floyd Abrams and others are involved in this, and he's a great First Amendment lawyer. And Fox has taken care to cover her, and they are protecting her with great legal talent, and she's in good hands. So she's going to have quite a defense. She just won't have the American media on her side.
Well, that being said, Joe, I mean, just as a larger question here, if a reporter gets information that they know is in violation of a court's gag order, do they have some responsibility to not publish that information?
No. Their responsibility stems from the First Amendment. Now, of course, news organizations impose restrictions on themselves, such as not reporting information that might, for example, disclose troop movements or other things. Although the New York Times regularly discloses confidential intelligence information that harms American lives, they will deny that, but they're full of baloney. So the bottom line is it depends on each individual news organization, their standards, their ethics. They govern themselves, which is the way we want it under the First Amendment. Sometimes they do it well, sometimes they don't do it well. This reporting was monumentally important to understanding the story on the ground there, because the treating psychiatrist told authorities that this guy was very, very dangerous and needed to be taken care of. Of course, he wasn't.
It's not an unimportant fact, given the debate we're having in this country.
No, it's very important. And in fact, the reporting by FoxNews.com on this was the best reporting on the ground about this horrible story.
All right, I gotta ask you, because I know that you live in the People's Republic of Montgomery County.
Not a single Republican legislator
I know
on the council. It's all Democratic all the time.
We were just talking about this being the last day of the state legislature, and we've been going through all of the, thank goodness, because, how much more damage can they do? They have basically repealed the death penalty. They have passed these very restrictive gun laws. They've raised the gas tax. What is it about Maryland politics that, although when you talk to people, a lot of people don't agree with those particular positions, the state legislature just runs amok and just does what it wants to do without any consideration of what the people may want?
Maryland has devolved into a one-party state. The Republican Party has abdicated its responsibility by not organizing itself well, not fielding good candidates, not being able to raise enough money. After Mac Mathias left the scene, the Republican Party seemed to lose the concept of how to win an election. And although Robert Ehrlich did become governor, he couldn't get reelected. There are a lot of reasons for that. But once Bob Ehrlich lost that governor's seat, that started a downward spiral for the Republican Party. And all you have to do is look around. Look at the District of Columbia with a one-party system. Look at California. Look at New York, for heaven's sakes. And that will tell you that the greatest threat to democracy and good public policy is a one-party system. And that's exactly what's happened in Maryland. And it's going to be a long, hard slog. One of the ways to start is by getting people up in arms, you should pardon the expression, about gun control. And I really hope that people get a referendum to repeal the new gun control legislation, because it is an outrageous usurpation of the Second Amendment. You know what I always like to tell people? The First Amendment is freedom of speech. What came next? The ability to carry a gun. The Second Amendment to the Constitution was the right to keep and bear arms. What an amazing timing. I mean, look at it. It wasn't Amendment 26. It was Amendment 2. So the bottom line is referendums are important, and I hope there is one on the gun control thing. And I hope the Republicans use it and use it as a way to organize better, because they've done a miserable job.
All right. Joe DiGenova, our legal analyst, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet, guys.
Thanks, Joe.